Hi. In my career, I've met many people who have lost loved ones due to careless medical errors. For purposes of this story, let's call these people Beth. Beth is a combination of any number of clients, men and women, who've hired me to help them over the years. Beth lost a spouse because of a simple, stupid, preventable error made by a medical practitioner. Regardless of the cause, Beth has had to face the decision to change her spouse's status to do not resuscitate. Then, she had to bury the love of her life in a circumstance where they should have had many more years left to share. After all of that, Beth has every right to be angry, to want to make the doctor feel the same kind of pain inflicted on her and her family. Blame is the normal, natural reaction to situations of anger and sadness. The remarkable thing about Beth is that part of her realizes that her anger and her blame will not make things better. At some point in the process, instead of casting blame, Beth realizes what she needs to move forward in her life is accountability. I remember a particular client who told me that every night after dinner, he would sit down to watch TV, and his dogs would sit right next to his wife's empty chair. We all need accountability before we can move forward. The Pied Piper of vulnerability and accountability in American life is a woman named Brene Brown. I'll link her famous TED Talk below. If you've not heard of her, take the time to watch. It's worth the 20 minutes. The amazing part of her teachings is that it's all backed by scientific research. As a people, we are hardwired for connection. We need each other. And part of being able to coexist is the idea that we will hold each other accountable. But accountability is not blame. In fact, the two are polar opposites. Brene Brown can explain it far better than me.
Here's what we know from the research. Blame is simply the discharging of discomfort and pain. It has an inverse relationship with accountability.
Accountability removes the aspect of vengeance and anger by focusing on the broken promise. Accountability is an empathetic process that focuses on the person who broke the chain. As Dr. Brown would put it,
accountability by definition is a vulnerable process. It means me calling you and saying, hey, my feelings were really hurt about this. No, and talking. It's not blaming. Blaming is simply a way that we discharge anger, which is really hard.
Accountability is a foundational element of the American existence. I remember President Reagan holding the Russians accountable.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
I grew up with accountability as a staple in my life. When I was 17, my dad was in the construction business. He was building a house and I had just met a girl. I got the great idea to take the girl and a bottle of wine to the house under construction. My dad just so happened to check on the progress of the house that day and found me with the wine and the girl on the back deck. Back at home, my dad held me accountable. The process was simple and dispassionate. First, there was a clear expectation. I knew I was not supposed to be hanging out at a construction site drinking alcohol with a girl. Second, he allowed me to explain. After I ran through the litany of reasons it was no big deal and it wasn't my fault, my dad asked me, "Is that your reason or your excuse?" In Dad's world, there were no valid reasons, just excuses, and excuses were not good enough to avoid responsibility and the consequences of my actions. Third, he pointed out the impact of my actions, what the impact could have been to the girl's parents, to my dad, and to me. And fourth, he reinforced the expectations through consequences. 2 months without my car. In regard to healthcare, there's a clear expectation that our doctors and hospitals will not harm us. As for explanations, the healthcare industry has a problem. If you read the website of any large healthcare organization, you will see some version of accountability is at the heart of everything we do, or other promises regarding patients being placed first, etc., etc., etc. In reality, the healthcare industry has made so many exceptions to accountability that the concept has lost its meaning. In a book on accountability in healthcare, the author concludes, the A word is fraught with nuance. Accountability is an underexplored concept whose meaning remains evasive, whose boundaries are fuzzy, and whose internal structure is confusing. Nuanced, underexplored, evasive, fuzzy, and confusing do not sound like words that are intended to hold anyone accountable. I recently filed a case against a hospital and a surgeon for a young man who had to have his foot amputated. The answer? I wasn't his doctor. Even if I was his doctor, he hurt himself. Even if he didn't hurt himself, other people hurt him. And finally, even if he didn't hurt himself and others didn't hurt him, it's God's fault. So what's the impact of this litany of excuses? Of the $20 trillion spent in the United States every year, $4 trillion goes to health care. We spend 1 out of every $5 in our country on health care. And what are we getting for our money? Babies die in the United States at a greater rate than Canada, Switzerland, Great Britain, France, Australia, Germany, Sweden, and Japan. Our rate is right there with Serbia, Bosnia, Latvia, Qatar, and Chile. And it's not just babies. The latest estimate indicates that 250,000 Americans die every year from preventable medical errors. The lack of accountability in healthcare is killing us faster than anything except heart disease and cancer. The problem with these excuses is that nothing gets fixed, and more and more and more people die. It reminds me of a story. Once upon a time, there were 4 people. Everybody, somebody, anybody, and nobody. These people all worked together and there was a problem at work. Everybody discovered the problem and was sure somebody would handle it. Somebody discovered the problem and was sure that anybody would fix it. Anybody did not fix the problem, believing it belonged to everybody. And in the end, nobody fixed the problem. The one place I have found accountability for healthcare providers is in the courtroom. My faith in the process of accountability has been validated dozens of times through the strength of people like you who sit on juries across my state. People know that hospitals and doctors understand money as a consequence that changes behavior. They inherently know that it takes large verdicts to reaffirm the expectations we have of our healthcare providers not to harm us and to get them to change their behavior to make things better for us all. I have to believe that healthcare is not the only industry to give lip service to the idea of accountability and then do everything it can to avoid that concept. What's it like in your world? When things go wrong, do people run for cover and pass blame like a hot potato? Is there ever accountability and change? The next time you're angry and want to lash out and blame others at work or even at home, step back, count to 10, Do whatever you need to do to take the emotion out of the equation and implement this process. I think you'll find less arguments and better results. I'm making these videos to share my journey, to show how in my experience our why defines everything in our lives, whether we want it to or not. I hope the people watching take away something they can use to help themselves in their journey. I'll be putting these videos out on a regular basis. You can find them here on this channel, or you can find a link to them on our website at kcinjury.com. Thanks for watching, and be well.